Hi and welcome to Mike's V8 Garage. This time, having just refurbished my front calipers, I'm now moving on to the rears. So as well as the front brake calipers, I also managed to get a set of rears, and at a very cheap price. Don't get me wrong, I'm not going to complain for cheap stuff, but these ones, because they're steel on the rear, are absolutely solid. It's taken a good day's work just to get these pads moving. I dread to think what the pistons are like, we'll soon find out. But getting these pins out here, and the same on the other ones, well, they've been soaking, as you can see, in penetrating oil for at least 36 hours now, and I'm willing to bet they probably still won't move an inch. I've managed to get the one part of the bracket off, and you can see that the sort of rust and crud that's caked on there, and you could really tell that when I was trying to get this out. Admittedly, because it's got a nice sort of standard bolt head on it, you could get purchase on at the breaker bar, but these, the other half of the slider, have got a deep T50 head, which, when all of that's rusted in place, makes it really difficult. However, a little bit of persuasion, coupled with a little bit of fast release, finally got them moving, but absolute nightmare getting them off. However, when it comes to these pins here that hold the pads in place, we are now on day 4 of trying to get them to move. So they've been sitting now for 2 days, having been pretty much heated to almost red hot with this, and then they've been soaked in plus gas every 12 hours or so, and I'll just let them sit for 3 days. A bit of a Heath Robinson camera setup, but hopefully you can see this okay. But yeah, one fine tool. Let's hope these start to move. Hold up. I won't swear because I'm live on camera. Finally. Flippin' heck. Let's hope the others go as easily. That took a lot of effort. Yes! That was quite literally 4 days of continual effort trying to get those things free. Right, now I need to see whether I can get the pistons to move, because if they're seized in the bores, then these really might just be scrap. As it is, I've got one of the pads in place just to give me a firm surface to push against, because I'm not going to be reusing them, and then a G-clamp, which I'm just going to try and use to wind the pistons back in. Oh dear. The main thing is whether the bores are rusted. Oh, here we go. It's moving. I'm getting some brake fluid popping out the back. That has got to be one of the worst bleed screws I've seen. This is definitely not going to be as easy as the front calipers. So, bleed screws are out. Let's continue winding these. As I said, I'll get some compressed air on them tomorrow when I don't have a sleeping toddler upstairs, and see whether I can get them out. Okay, next. Yeah, that's moving fine. No problems with that one at least. Actually, that's the back of the piston. I reckon I can push that out using a screwdriver. One piston. And actually, that's in pretty good condition, I think, once it cleans up, which is a relief because they're fairly pricey. The seal's getting renewed anyway, but I'll get some photos of this later. The bores are fine. A little bit of rust around the inner lip, but that's okay. The actual surface of the bore is fine, so we've got a good set of calipers here that can be brought back, which is really good. The final thing I'm going to do is get one of my picks and just ease out the inner seal. And again, you can see there's a lot of just kind of rust and crud starting to get through, and that's why I think these brakes are not known for being particularly reliable, because they are steel and they just let rust develop in there. Well, I've just got all the parts back from running through a parts washer at work, which, although it doesn't appear to have made much difference to them, has actually got a lot of the muck and the grease off, which is the main thing. And the whole of that then will enable me to stick the largely cleaned up calipers into that thing and get them properly cleaned out. One good thing though is that the pistons do move freely within the bores. So again, once they're all cleaned up and once the bores have been given a light polish, these guys should come back from the dead quite nicely, which is going to be a good thing. Well, it's about half an hour later, and what I can say is I'm not even going to bother trying to bring these back. I thought at first I could save these pins, but to be honest, there's that much rust eating into them that by the time I've filed them down or sanded them down to an even surface, they're probably going to be too small. So those are junk, which isn't a great surprise. The annoying thing is I'm also probably going to have to get rid of these, because again they've just been pitted too far really. I've had a go at that one, and you probably can't see there, but there's a lot of scoring and pitting. It's not a smooth surface anymore, and I think it'd just be a false economy to try and go any further with them. So they'll be getting replaced. So it's turning into a bit more of an expensive fix than I thought, and there's a lot of rust in all the different corners and crannies. It's going to be quite difficult to get out. But as I said, it's just a case of time and effort, and there's an example of that. Here's one of the pistons before, or it's here, yeah, one of the two pistons. Not particularly appetising. And a quick bit of effort with some Scotch-Brite, some copper wire brushes and some metal polish, and this is the result so far. So quite a difference, I'd say, and well worth just a little bit of effort. There's still a wee bit of polishing to go on this one, but basically that's good to go. So at least I don't have to buy new pistons, which is a start. Well, in contrast to the last video where I said all of this lot was going in the sandblaster, I've now decided to take a little bit more of a chemical approach, using evaporust, however you want to pronounce it, tomato. But I've got all of the worst of it off, which involved quite literally chiseling and chipping and then wire brushing, so it's in pretty good state already. And now all I'm going to do is lay this out in there with all of the other stuff as well, because I might as well. And as a bit of an experiment, I've left the pins completely untouched, just to see if there's a difference between how the pins turn out versus how the brackets and the calipers turn out. All of that's going to go in there, along with the freshly wire brushed calipers. And the reason I'm doing this is because I want to get into all that rust in at the bores there. I certainly don't want to media blast that for obvious reasons, and the thought of doing it with Scotch-Brite and reamers and stuff like that is not particularly filling me with joy. So as I said, we'll give this a go. I've seen good results elsewhere. Admittedly, fitting it's going to be a bit of an issue, and we'll see how it goes. Let the magic happen. Right, it's been about 3 days or so. I chucked the pistons in there quickly just to give them a rinse. But obviously they were polished before, but interestingly, all of that remaining rust on the surface that was going to get treated with cure rust or something similar appears to have gone. Yeah, even what was left inside, so that's a good start. As we get the first caliper out though, there's a lot of bare metal there where before there was just rust. and actually that rust is just rubbing off, as in the orange parts that are left. So far, yeah, that's looking quite good. Oh yeah, that's a lot better actually. So a lot of that orange residue is just rubbing off. So far, a little bit left there. So far there's still a little bit left, but this has left me far less to clean up. So I'll get all of this out and cleaned and give you a roundup after that. Not bad, but not good either. So as you can see, the results from the Evaporust, although in many ways it was good, don't get me wrong, I'd still use it again in certain applications, but in this case the rust was just too heavy and there was really too much other crud in the way and all the rest of it. So rather than persevering with that, because I'd given it a good try, I then moved back to what my original idea was, which was to use the media blaster behind me and just sit there and go through it. Now even then, and you'll see it in the time lapse coming up, I only got a fairly light media and it was a little bit worn anyway, so it was pretty heavy going getting all that rust off, but the media blaster did end up getting it done. It just took a fair bit of time, but the results, I think, as you'll see, are well worth it. Well, we're almost ready for paint now. The one final thing I've got to do is take all of the bits I've just media blasted and put them through a parts washer just to make sure there's no residual media there and get all the residual other stuff off. So that'll be done tomorrow, and then we're on to paint. So now it's time to paint the rear calipers. They're hopefully suspended with a little bit of an adaptation, and it's the same routine as the fronts. 3 coats, 2 light, 1 heavy of black, and then a couple of coats of clear. Right, I'm now ready to rebuild these. The paint has come up pretty good. Not great in some areas because I was painting at an angle, but the key thing is it's covered, it's protected from rust. A little bit of paint I'm going to have to clear off the inner surface of the bores there, but the key thing is the bores have survived okay, and there's paint inside that little bit there to hopefully stop rust coming back in so easily, plus I'm going to grease it up as well when I put it together. Same thing with the brackets, all the threads are now clear, these are pretty much good to go. As I said, a little bit of clean up on these. I've got to clean up the surfaces for the slider pins to move in as well, because they're a bit rough, although that won't make a massive difference. But other than that, those are the bits I'm reusing, which is the pistons, the bodies of the calipers, the brackets, the bolts, and the banjo bolts as well. Everything else is new. The clips, bleed nipples, covers, slider pins with the seals, inner piston seals, outer piston seals, and washers for the bolts, and pad slide pins, all of which are new and surprisingly expensive from Lexus, but considering the state of the other ones, they weren't really cleaning up, so new is definitely the way to go. Well, that's one of them done, and it was actually a bit easier than I thought. Annoyingly, I had to sand back inside the bore where I tried to put a bit of paint in to protect from rust, because unfortunately the piston wouldn't move freely. But other than that, everything went in nice and easily. The pistons in, the seals, which I thought initially were going to be quite difficult, were actually fine, because the new ones were obviously not expanded like the old ones. The slider pins and their boots went on fine. I had to clean up again their bores and so on a little bit, but overall that all went together quite well. And now I've just got one more to do and these are ready to go on, so I'm quite happy with that. And after a bit more effort, that's both calipers done, fully refurbished, fully rebuilt, and in full working order again. Which, considering what they started out like, isn't too bad. There was a time I thought these were going to get junked, but they've been recovered. So after I fitted the rear calipers last night, the front's obviously been fitted quite a while before that. I'm now on my way back home from work after driving out in the morning. The brakes have been given a good warm up, and from first impressions all I can say is I am really impressed. I mean, the rear brakes were obviously the main issue. The fronts were a bit sticky, but the rears I knew had problems. And the stock slider pins, when I removed the old ones, kind of confirmed that. But the difference it's made to the braking of having a fully functioning set of front and rear brakes, sounds obvious I know, is really immense. Whereas before I'd pull up at a junction and you'd feel the whole car just kind of shift back and forward as the brakes came on. With the new front calipers, the braking effect was better, but there was still that fore and aft shifting of weight. Now that the rear calipers are on and are properly gripping and providing that sort of trail braking effect, there's still a slight move. I mean, it's a 1.7 ton car, but the difference in vehicle stability, both approaching junctions on braking and taking off after, is noticeably better. It's made the car, I'm not going to do the whole it's like a new car type thing, but it is a significant improvement. And what I'm really hoping is that when I get the suspension bushes done, I get a similar effect from them. So all in all, as a bit of a summary, check your brakes, check your slider pins on the rear of a Lexus GS especially, because mine weren't in bad condition, the brakes overall, but those slider pins were absolutely solid. And the state of the ones on the brakes that are refurbished to put on now was even worse. So, worth checking. All they need is a bit of a free up and a re-grease, and a rub down and a re-grease, don't we all? And the difference is really staggering. So, there you go, top tip for the day. So hopefully, usual routine, if you like this video, please hit the like button down below. It helps with the analytics, just helps get this channel a bit more visible. And if you want to see more of what I do with both this car and the other two randomly broken and needing restoration cars in the fleet, then consider subscribing. But other than that, thanks for watching.